Hey guys, how's it going? Scott here from scottsbasslessons.com. Hope you're having a great day. I hope you're making a great day. Today I want to talk about something a little bit different, and I want to talk about getting the most out of your practice time. If you're living in the same world as I am right now, it's it's harder now than ever to just get focused and get stuff done with all the noise on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, anything else, Denmark? Instagram, Periscope, whatever, noisy, YouTube. Who is this guy putting all these lessons on YouTube? And I know I'm going to kick his ass. Anyway, so it's a noisy world that we live in, and right now it's sometimes really hard to get stuff done. And I do see, and even, rewind the clock back to when I was just starting out on bass, it was hard back then as well, to get the most out of your practice time. So it's not just about talking about, the world we live in today. It's also just talking about, in general, how to get the most out of your practice time. And the number one mistake that I see people making time and time again, the students that I work with, is they focus way too wide. Okay, way too wide. There's just all these different elements of stuff they're working on is just so wide in its focus that it's really hard for them to see any progression with what they're working on, because they're working on just way too much stuff, right? So they might be shedding for a month, 2 months, and at the end of that period, they reflect back on what they've done and they're fed up with it. Because they've been focusing on so many things, they don't really see any real progression, even though there will have been progression, but it might have just been a small amount on each one of those elements that they've been practicing on. So what I really recommend doing, guys, is just narrowing that focus down onto just a few key elements, things that you really want to, push within your bass playing. Now, there's obviously the Pareto principle, which is the 80-20 rule, which is 20% of what you're working on in your practice time right now, whether it be arpeggios or technique or scales or modes or transcription, 20% of that stuff will equal 80% of the results. Okay, so 20% of what you're practicing will equal 80% of the results, but 80% of what you're practicing will only equal 20% of the results. And it's focusing and trying to work out what that 20% is that's going to equal the 80%. That's what you want to be looking out for, okay? You want to be looking out for what is the 20% that you're working on a daily or weekly basis, hopefully daily. Guys, make it daily. Practice that bass, even if it's just, 10, 20, 30 minutes a day, you've got to be practicing your bass every day. Pick it up. Do not put it in the case because it makes that barrier. You won't get it out of the case. Just leave it out. But yeah, just really narrow that focus down. Now, what I really recommend doing, so instead of, and I can give you a few examples of this. So I want to talk about two different things, okay? So one is narrowing the focus. That's really important. So instead of thinking to yourself, let me give you an example. Instead of thinking to yourself, I want to learn my arpeggios. Okay, that's just sort of like such a lofty goal. It's like me thinking to myself, I want to climb Everest. Yeah, in my pants. Okay, so my point is that it's just, especially if you're doing it in your pants, it's the goal is too lofty, right? It's too much. What you want to be thinking is things such as, I really want to learn my arpeggios around a 2-5-1 chord sequence. And I'm going to be releasing a lesson on the 2-5-1 chord sequence, actually, either next week or the week after, so watch out for that one. So instead of thinking, I want to learn my arpeggios, you want to be narrowing that focus down and then thinking to yourself things such as, okay, I really want to learn my arpeggios much better around a 2-5-1 chord sequence. Okay. And you could even narrow it even further down and think to yourself, I want to learn my arpeggios much better over a 2-5-1 chord sequence in C major. Now that is a perfect thing to work on, in my opinion. So you're not just thinking, oh, I'm going to play, arpeggios up and down the scale, up and down the neck. You're really getting focused and you're working on a particular thing, learning your arpeggios round a 2-5-1 chord progression in the key of C. In this case, that would be D minor, G7 to C major, okay? Now you can learn your arpeggios over that chord sequence first, you know, start off with the 1 octaves, then maybe 2 octaves, and then G7, and then C major 7. And then descending as well. Then we'll learn them from different fingerings. So you're learning it from the first finger, then from the little finger, then from the second finger. Okay, so you're really getting narrow in your focus. Instead of thinking, I want to learn my arpeggios, you're thinking, I want to learn my arpeggios around one particular chord progression, and then even tighter, you know, narrowing that focus even tighter. I want to learn my arpeggios around a 2-5-1 chord progression in the key of C major. Then learn it all over the neck. Trust me, guys, if you do this kind of stuff, if you practice just a 2-5-1 chord progression in the key of C by the end of the month and then reflect on, you know, back over that month, you are going to be absolutely amazed at the progress and the fluidity you have around the fingerboard. Rather than, I want to learn my arpeggios, I want to climb Everest in my pants with a toothpick, you know, that kind of thing. So really get narrow with that focus. Then once you've nailed that over the fingerboard, then maybe, okay, let me look at different keys. Okay. Now let me look at, now I want to learn a 2-5-1 over the entire neck in the key of F major. Okay, so we're G minor, C7, F major, you know, really narrow that focus down. And I can tell you from the bottom of my heart that this stuff really, really works. I've had 2 huge jump forwards in my progression over the last, how many years I've been playing bass, 20 years or something like that. I can really, for instance, I went to a guy called Mike Walker, a great guitar player from the UK once, and he said, I went to him, I was like, you know, crazy. And he said, okay, I want you to go home and just practice a D Dorian for the next month. Okay, D Dorian for the next month. I was like, what? D Dorian for the next month? He was like, yeah, just D Dorian, not Dorian. You know, not the Dorian mode in D and then in E and then in F and stuff like that. Just D Dorian. I want you to learn it all over the neck. I want you to come up with licks and lines all in D Dorian. I want you to look for transcriptions that you can be working on around the D Dorian tonality. I rinsed it for a month and I progressed so much within that month. I did it for another month. And that was one of the biggest leaps I ever had in my playing. Now, I'm not saying go do D Dorian. What I'm saying is use this technique that I'm telling you about. Get narrow in your focus and you will see huge results in your playing, and you'll feel like at the end of 1 month, 2 months, 3 months practice that you've really made big steps. I'm sure a lot of you more advanced guys, you understand the plateau thing, right? So you practice forever and it just seems like you're just going along, you're stuck on this little plateau, and then suddenly, whoop, you'll have this little, you know, whoop, your playing will get a little better, and then another plateau, and then whoop, you know, and it goes like this. So instead of your progression doing this, it generally does this, you know, and it has these big plateaus. One way of really squashing them plateaus down is using this technique, okay? Narrowing that focus down and making sure that you are working on just the minutiae and not just, you know, I want to learn my arpeggios. Then, what the second thing that I really wanted to bring into this lesson as well, talking about getting narrow with your focus, is cross-contaminating your practice with the same elements, okay? That was off the top of my head. I could probably come up with a better way of describing this. But my point is that I really want you to tie a thread between the different elements of what you're practicing. So for instance, I really recommend splitting your practice up into different sections. For me, I normally practice my technique first. Okay, so, you know, just getting my chops warmed up, making sure I'm fluid, and if there's any lines that I'm struggling with, working on those, speed and things like that, fluidity around the fretboard. Then I work on arpeggios, chord tones, scales, harmony, right? And then after that, I work on transcription. Okay, so I'm working on things, transcribing people, listening out for things that really resonate for me, and then trying to get it into my playing. And then the fourth thing is putting it into practice, just shredding, just, creating bass lines, and et cetera, et cetera. The key, guys, is to threading that together. So it all relates to one another, okay? So, which is why I say cross-contaminating, whatever I say, cross-contaminating your practice time. So say, for instance, you were working on a 2-5-1 in C major. And that's what you were working on for your arpeggios. So you're learning your 1 octaves, okay? Then you're learning your 2 octaves. Then you want to start learning your scales as well. So you bring the modes into it. So I'm going to be looking at D Dorian. And then G Mixolydian. And then C major, okay? Okay, so I'm tying that together. The arpeggios are linked with the scales. Now, when I'm looking at technique, I'm trying to create, for instance, licks and lines. So, something that's hard or, quite difficult, challenging to play. Say I was having trouble playing something like that. I'm looking to create lines and technique exercises that I can use over the 2-5-1 progression that I've been practicing my arpeggios and scales on. Okay, so I'm tying the two together. If I'm playing sort of like, that again, I was just doing the D Dorian, G7, C major, and I'm practicing in digital patterns, things like that. And then finally putting it into practice, so soloing and things like that, same thing, right? So you want to get better at soloing. This is another great example. I want to get better at soloing. It's another one of them, I want to climb Everest in my pants moments. You don't want to get better at soloing, or you do, but the best thing to do is not to think that, is to think, I want to really focus on soloing over a 2-5-1 chord progression in the key of C. So that's what I'm going to do. So I've got the D minor. I'm practicing soloing over the same progression. And now by doing this, you'll find that everything seems to tie together much more in your practice, and you're going to see big results in a much shorter period. The gag is, guys, that even though you're getting really narrow on your focus, you're really speeding up your learning, and you're learning it properly, okay? Because you're learning your arpeggios, you're learning your scales over that chord sequence, then you're doing your technique stuff over that chord sequence, then you're practicing soloing, for instance, over that chord sequence. Then maybe you want to do some transcribing. So what are you looking out for? You're looking out for things in that, with that chord progression. What are people using? Soloing lines. Look for that stuff. Look for, maybe you're listening to a Miles album, Miles Davis, and he's playing a tune and it's got a 2-5-1 in. Maybe it's not in the key of C. Transcribe it, then transpose it into the key of C. Stuff like this, make sure you've got that thread. So of all the different elements, the scales and arpeggios, the technique, the soloing, making up bass lines, etc., make sure there's a common thread that ties them all together. So again, narrow your focus down and make sure there's a common thread that ties all the stuff that you're practicing together. Now, I'm not saying you can't hear something that's really cool and think, oh, I really want to transcribe that, but I can't because I'm working on this. You absolutely can, don't worry about it. What I'm saying is that the main focus of your practice should be on something that ties it all together, where you can work on other things around it. Don't worry about that. Sometimes I practice for, bill coming through the door. I hate them bills coming through the door. Can you remember when you were a kid? Can you remember when you were a kid, D-Mac? And you used to really wish that somebody would send you a letter. I can remember thinking, Mum, Dad, why don't anybody send me a letter? And now when people send me a letter, I'm like, it's a bill. All they are is bills. But yeah, tie all this stuff together, guys, and it can have such a huge, it'll make a huge difference to you playing it really will. Now, hopefully you've enjoyed this lesson. If you have enjoyed this lesson, make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel. There'll be a button somewhere around here if you're watching it on YouTube. And if you really do want to take your bass playing to the next level, make sure you go over to scottsbasslessons.com. Subscribe. You can subscribe for free and I'll send you a whole load of free stuff, the Bass Players Toolkit and things like that. But also check out the Academy. It is the number one place to learn bass online right now. There's step-by-step courses. There's some of the best bass educators live streaming lessons and seminars every week for the Academy members. People like Todd Johnson, Ed Friedland, Danny Mo Morris. We've even got Sean Hurley involved, like crazy, crazy stuff. So check out the Academy at scottsbasslessons.com, guys. You can get a 14-day free trial just to see if it's for you and come and hang out there. It's blooming awesome. Anyway, guys, take it easy. And as always, I'll see you in the shed. The 2015 Kickstarter challenge.
Hey everybody.
Hey.
Hey everybody.
Hi everybody. Hello all. Hello.